us, we have some very people with a lot more expertise than I would have, so I'm going to pass them over to you shortly. But today is all about, I suppose, exploring the different considerations and implications of whenever you're starting to build a product. So it's kind of been born from a number of conversations that we've had with founders across Northern Ireland who kind of don't really know where to start, and are getting different kind of pieces of advice from people, and probably aren't really seeing the whole picture and understanding exactly what the considerations really should be whenever you're starting to build a prototype or an MVP solution. So we thought we would bring people together to help people make a more informed decision on prototyping. David Shawe is with us from Invisible Building. Do you want to maybe just introduce yourselves around the table?
Yeah, we'll start with Connor.
Sure. Johnny.
Where is there
Johnny,
a
sorry.
microphone or a camera here?
If you see the owl in the middle, the thing you realise it does like a full 360 of the room.
Wow, okay.
So people will be able to see when it picks up whoever speaks.
Okay. Hi, my name is Johnny. I'm a master's student at Queen's studying software development. I have a few startup ideas, and at the moment I'm just getting myself into the kind of founder scene and figuring out what my first steps are for developing a product.
Cool. So my name is David Shawe. I'm a designer first, and I run a design agency called Invisible Building. So where we specialise in working with startups to build prototypes. We also do e-commerce services and marketing services for startups, but that's our prime focus at the moment is building prototypes for startups. I'm also a founder working on my own startup called Sugar Financial Technology, where we're redesigning the tip jar, so working on the future of finance, starting with small change.
I'm James Nesbit. I own Myth Digital. We're a small software and mobile app development company here in Belfast. We work with startups and transforming businesses to build product and transform internal processes through lots of different mediums. We have a strong focus on UX design, and that's us.
Find things that we've not talked about. So my company is Spectrum Angels. I'm trying to build a company to normalise neurodivergency and to help neurodivergent people. I want to tackle unemployment rates, education, and provide very bespoke and innovative services that will work for a different kind of brain.
My name's Ali MacFarlane. I am CEO of Sugar. We see the competitors in the room.
Yeah,
very much.
Collaboration, not competition.
I run. We've actually two offices. One in Belfast. We just moved in at Bedford Street. The other one's in Shoreditch. So we very much like Myth. We're kind of like a partnership to our clients. We create bespoke apps, software. We're moving into the AR and VR space as well. So I guess a lot of the companies would trust us with certain products and certain services, and we digitize that through mobile apps and I guess all the software platforms. We have an in-house team, very much like our collaborators, and we have a design team, UX, UI, we have front-end, back-end development, and then a QA team as well. So we're all very much busy and held accountable, I guess. So that's us.
Yep, I'm Connor. So I'm a software developer. Have been for over 20 years. I've worked for companies big and small. At the moment, or for the past 4 years, I've been freelancing for a software accelerator company in America. So taking the founders' ideas, building it, bringing them to market. What I do in that process is build scalable back-end architectures, usually on AWS.
Hi, I'm Destiny, software engineering student at Ulster University, and I'm just into servers.
Thank you. As I said, there's loads of expertise around the room, and I suppose the objective of this session is to help you guys as founders or aspiring founders or those who want to digitalise any service-based offering that they have, to just be able to make a more informed decision on what you can do and the approaches that you can take. So really happy for this session to be led by you guys, both online and in the room, and what you want to get out of it. I suppose it makes sense to start with what is the purpose of bringing technology in, like what are people trying to do, and I think the fundamental thing is that they're starting to prove a solution. So they're starting to show that there is a way that we can fix this problem and create a solution for a problem through technology. So it's really about de-risking that offering that you have and showing that, okay, this actually makes sense. We're validating an idea and we're starting to show a prototype, develop a prototype and bring it out to customers to get that market validation. So I suppose challenges maybe are a good place to start. As founders, we don't really have a whole lot of capital to be putting into things. Most are obviously bootstrapped. There's not a lot of spare resource that can go into these types of things, but yet in the same breath, it's exactly what you need to be doing. So I think both resource in terms of time, so the length of development, but also in terms of capital injection and money that you can put into it is a huge challenge for founders. How does that kind of process work if you have, say, like a prototype built in a low or no code tool, and as a developer then you're either brought onto the team or outsourced to come into the project? That's okay for you to build upon?
Yeah, like well, the company I work for, that they would produce those low code, no code type of prototypes themselves, but whenever they've validated the market and they're ready to go ahead, we get the designer in, they would design everything up properly, and then you would build it not on a low code tool, but normal software development process.
Mm-hmm. And tell me a little bit about how costly and resource heavy that might be.
Yeah, very costly, and I think one of the big mistakes that I've seen over the past 4 years is people overbuilding. So people trying to scale too early, trying to put in X, Y, and Z features that don't validate. There's assumptions about the market, but are just fluff, and it costs a lot of money to design, build, test, maintain software, and a lot of people don't appreciate that and think that all these features are essential in the software product that they produce, but in essence, most of them don't actually contribute to validating the market for that product.
I'd agree with that, definitely. And I think I've seen you nodding as well. I think we're in a slightly so a lot of our projects that we work on, we obviously have to get the UX right. We need to make sure the user can have that flow from end to end. We have to work out whether it is actually a function that's going to work, and how does that then link into. We're always asked, third-party plugins and systems, but what we've noticed, what I've noticed and observed is this: trying to plow everything in, trying to get the whole gamut of a perfect app or system in front of your user base or your investor. I think the investor, I'm quite lucky to be in a certain circles of that when you're building a product, you're in front of various people. The investor wants to see a function that's going to work. They don't care about these kind of frilly bits at the side. They need it to work. They need it to validate it. It's all about the user, I guess. I'm sure some of the feedback we get from users are insane. It's brilliant nuggets that we would never think of. So you're trying to, as an agency, as a development team, the design team, you're trying to work out: is this the best route? Is this function valid? Is the frilly bits at the side even worth applying 3 months of extra development, extra design, when you've got to get it right and you've got to have that function work properly, even if it doesn't maybe feel the most sexiest of functions, but as long as it works, then you validate it and move on and get to the next stage.
Would you, in Sugar Rush, because sometimes we find that there are so many different sources of advice and information for founders that it's hard to, I suppose, find which of those is right and trusted and that kind of thing. So would you almost have that advisory piece to your offering as well, in that, okay, well guys, let's get the fundamentals right, and then worry about the frilly bits whenever that comes a thing? Because I think that kind of trusted source of advice, because it can be difficult for founders to, especially when they're non-technical and they're new to this world. It can be really difficult for them to kind of filter through all of the nonsense that's told to people, and I suppose for their own benefit. So I think that advisory piece is probably really important as well. Guidance more than anything else.
Yeah, I mean, we need the input from the client or the someone who's coming up with this idea that they want us to design and build. You know, we need as much input from them as it is from our side. It's difficult. I think it's, if you're overcomplicating it, we're working on a project at the minute which is just, there's a lot there. You know, there's almost like 3 apps in it. You know, but the client believes that it can go into various places, so it's almost too much, and I think that's what we're seeing now, and certainly from the Sugarrush point of view, that there's almost too much going on, where you just look at the fundamentals, look at the core. Like if you're talking about the app for the quirky weddings, like get the core right, you know, then build on the rest, because you could spend a lot of time and waste a lot of money and time trying to get to the ultimate app, whatever that is.
Yeah.
Even commercially as well, like the perspective of, you know, get the fundamentals right, and then there are opportunities to develop your product roadmap, like according to what these people want in addition to that core, and then you do tiers of pricing, for example. You know, there's ways around it in that sense too.
Yeah, just to add to that, Ali, you're spot on. Iterating on top of a core features key. We talk a lot about MVP and getting the MVP and using prototyping to essentially just be a market validation tool. To go to market, get validation, understand the product, understand the features, understand what your users want as well as what you think you want. I was down at SaaStock yesterday. I was listening to Whereby. I'm not sure if anyone's heard of Whereby.
Yep.
Yeah. And he was very interesting in their approach. He said his initial approach was, we literally wanted video peer-to-peer on a link accessible on the web. That was their MVP. That was it. They said, if we can get that and we can go to market with that, wrap some strong branding around it, and we'll use that as our MVP, which was literally just, as we're looking at now, people on screen access via a link. And they just iterated as market testing came out and market validation. They researched their target groups, they researched their audience. They found that a lot of their teams wanted the ability for you to jump into each other's rooms, so they introduced that, and that was their MVP, I suppose. You know, just building an initial platform that your users are going to engage with, and then iterating on top. Because you're right, like nobody, you might think that everyone wants all of these cool features and everyone wants everything at once, but in reality, if you're serving a core need, users are going to use the product.
Just saying hello that Jenny, our CEO at Raise, has joined us as well as Andrew McLean, who is recently just joined the Raise team as one of our mentorship advisors on product specifically. So the guys have just been in with the workshop for those in our accelerator that are a little bit more, I suppose, advanced in their product build. So yes, you're very welcome. We're just talking about how we're using a prototype to really just prove assumptions that you're making about the solution that you're building and the considerations with each of those. So we're talking about how at the moment what the guys are seeing is that people are trying to do it all, and it's very difficult to cut through the noise and really just building that core functionality of the app to prove your solution.
We just had a very similar conversation with the guys in there. It's like, don't try and change the world immediately with your first release. You know, as you said, serve your core needs, serve the customer's core needs, and then get your next version out, and then your next version out. So yeah.
Just a question there from, I think it was Mark that I saw pop up. Mark, do you want to maybe unmute yourself and chat, Mark? So Mark is currently on our accelerator program as well. He runs a company called Circle. You don't have to unmute if you want. Oh, there you go. See you unmute.
Yeah, I'm a position where I've already started building an MVP. I've kind of culled it down to the smaller features I can. I've got it to a developer, and they've kind of handed off without finishing it, and I've been left a little bit in the lurch, and obviously spent some money myself. So I guess my question is, how do you find the right developers, and how can you sort of trust them? And yeah, that's my first question.
I see Leanne laughing there because Leanne had a similar experience, and I feel you're probably a wee bit triggered by this conversation. But maybe a good place to share what you went through, Leanne, if you don't mind.
Yeah, not at all. How do you find the right developer? I don't know yet. So I suppose my kind of process is that I started off with a co-founder who was doing the development, and turns out that he was building something different to what I was selling. So I had sales lined up, and when it came down to it, he was building something completely out of his own head, and you know, in the process, I've kind of learned where to go wrong. Developers, and I'm sorry that there's so many developers in the room. So
We all had it. Find a way.
I'm saying it. I'm glad I'm on this side of the screen so that you can't punch me. You know, there are people that have a lot of issues with developers, and I've interviewed a lot, and I'm on my third developer or development team, and it's so a couple of things I've kind of learned along the way is when interviewing the developers, it's who follows an actual process. Do they have a development process, as opposed to kind of listening to your ideas and then leaving it up to interpretation? They start building, and then you get kind of through the process and you realize they're building something different. So a couple of key things that I learned is that you don't necessarily know if you've got the right developer until you get down the road, no matter how well you click. But things that you can kind of use to safeguard your development project is making sure that you are super admin on everything, that you can lock people out. So, you know, if you're using GitHub, you are super admin and the developer cannot delete anything. And Bubble as well, is that you set up the things, you set up the domain name so that you hold the keys to your own castle. The other thing is documentation. So where I really got burnt was that the team were not documenting, and they kept promising to document. And so when we did part ways, no other developer would touch the project because there was no formal documentation. So you need to make sure that they are documenting as you go along, because then another developer can see what's happened and can pick up a project and actually move forward and see what's working. But the team I'm working with at the moment, there's two things that I really learned from them, and that is that we started off a process that took probably 10 weeks, is to actually create a functional requirements document. And that's literally the step-by-step of what the app needs to do in every function. And even though we did that and it was really thorough, now that we're in testing stage, we're seeing things that I had assumed was obvious, that it was across multiple personas, but because it wasn't explicitly stated, it didn't carry through. So I think I'm learning like the pitfalls, and you'll learn that as you go along. But if you can get a handle around a really robust FRD, functional requirements document, with matching flows, I think it reduces the amount of misinterpretation. And that was really good for me. And then the other big thing, so my middle developer kept promising that we had something, but he kept promising to show me. And it was probably 3-4 months down the line where I was expecting to launch and I still didn't have anything. So it's asking for those progress demos every 2 weeks. If you can see what they've done, I think you get to see if they're building the right thing, but it also keeps them on their toes, that they can't say they've worked for 4 weeks and nothing's actually happened. Because even though as a non-techie founder, you can log into GitHub and see some things happening, but if you can't read code, you actually don't know if it was anything worthwhile that was built, or if it was just a couple of lines to say that something's happening. And what else would I say? Is the other thing with developers I've found is that you have to have a project price and not by the hour. I would say that's been the biggest learning curve. If I was doing a keynote speech, the title of my speech would be what I wish I'd known £50,000 earlier. It's just I think there's some things you only learn from experience, but there are some of these kind of checks and things that I think can really help you to manage the team and keep the team interested. I think that kind of covers a lot of my learnings over the last 2 years.
That's brilliant. All of that is fantastic, Leanne, because I've been a project manager for over 15 years and I have managed techie guys and girls, even though they're in the minority, and designers and all the rest of it, and everything that Leanne said there. Mark, we talked about it on Tuesday. You need a very clear set of requirements, because what you think you're getting and what the tech person thinks they're coding can be so different. So it's, in fairness, and I'm going to stick up for techie people here, it's not really their fault, because if they don't have a clear set of requirements and the functional requirements and all the rest of it, now sometimes you have to work with egos, I get that, but you have to make sure that you have everything nailed, and that's why if you spend another month planning before you even go anywhere near coding, like, it is gold. And as Leanne said, like, you learn the hard way. You learn the hard way if you do not plan and get that unambiguous information down on paper. So, and the other thing about the guys to show you a demo every week or 2 weeks, I mean, I would have done a week. I would have said, right, let's see where you're at. So, yeah, good stuff.
Can I just add on that for non-tech founders? The thing about, everybody kept telling me about documentation, and I actually didn't know. As much as I kept asking for documentation, I didn't really know what it should look like. So if and I'm happy to share examples that I've used on this project, because I think that you need to see to what level of detail it should be, and it helps you think through what should be there, because you're thinking step by step from a user point of view, and I think you'll pick up a lot of issues before they happen. But to actually see what a set of documentation should look like, I think is massively helpful as a non-tech founder, because you don't know what you don't know, and unfortunately, it took me 3 developers to learn that.
And then again, when you hand over the documentation, and the tech person says, right, that's when you get the durations off them. You say, here's my set of requirements, convert this into the technical speak, and give me durations. So then they can, you can maybe add 3 or 4 days onto it, but that's how you make sure you don't get caught again for overrunning and overworking and all the rest of it. So getting durations from the outset is incredibly important, especially for your budget.
Emma, how are you doing? Oh, I think you're on mute. Possibly trying to fix it. This is all of our first times with Jittle, apart from David, and you guys have used it before. But all the learning. Don't know if I can unmute you, Emma, even.
You might be able to.
So milestones are key. I don't have to stick up for developers there, but I think the documentation will always change if you're working through a project. I think it's probably, it depends what sort of size the project is. I think having something to show every week, I'm just coming from our sort of environment, probably is a little bit unachievable. I think you got to hit the milestones, and I guess the processes are absolutely key. I think to set out milestones, set out the spec, set out the tech spec, set out the service of work effectively, and get that agreement. If you can get a price for the whole thing, brilliant, I think, but maybe the contract has to be absolutely solid, so everybody's on the same par. I think we have designers that will collaborate with developers on a regular basis, stuff might change because
Absolutely, it does. It
you know,
absolutely does. And your business requirements aren't always nailed by the customer at the start either. As you go through the process, they realise, oh, you know what, I forgot about that.
Yeah.
So
I think it's look. I think we're all coming from the same place. I think it's definitely set of requirements that everybody is clear.
Yeah.
You know, developers, designers, founders, they all want the same output, which is a deliverable at the end of it. You know, even at the Q&A stage as well, I think there has to be a collective sympathy of this stuff could change. There's developers have a hard job of building stuff. There's things that mightn't work, so they have to go back and make sure it does work. I think the documentation, you know, we've tried in Surerush to put, you know, you do make notes on it. I think at the end, maybe a documentation, fully script documentation at the end, because stuff could change, you know.
Yeah.
So, but that takes time, you know.
It's very time consuming.
I think documentation could run into weeks, you know, based on the size of the project. So I think the making sure everyone's on the same page.
And you think a week is totally unachievable? Even if you just
show
have
stuff.
Yeah, well, not even show stuff. It's more like a check-in.
Yeah.
You know, check-in. You go, well, how's it
you have
going?
your stand-ups. You know, you have your weekly or daily stand-ups. I think if everybody comes to the table, not only in agencies like ourselves, but you know, being able to do a stand-up every week, being able to kind of go, what's been happening, collaboration, you know, have you had a challenge with that? How do you overcome it? It can be a really exciting journey, especially when you have a heated debate, shall we say, between designers and developers, because they were saying like, this has to go this way, it can't go that way because
I'm waiting on this
because it just doesn't work that way. But I think daily stand-up, weekly stand-ups, I think I think the show stuff, depending on the size of it, a week to show. There mightn't be anything to show.
I suppose that's what I'm more meant. It's like a check-in. Like you just don't see them for 2 weeks and then they show you this bit.
We have weekly check-ins with our clients, and sometimes that call is 2 minutes. Sometimes you can jump on a call. How you guys doing? We're doing well. This is what we were working on. And just in terms of that documentation, someone mentioned for non-technical people how to document projects. We found user stories as a really good format in dissecting technical functionality into easy to digest deliverables. So we would actually work with clients from the get-go as part of our discovery to map out user stories, and it's very straightforward. Basically break down your different user groups, understand who your user groups are, understand the flow, and break that down into this user would like to do this. Very simple. This user would like to delete this option. This user might need to add this, and just break it down in the stories. It's a very easy way to document from the get-go, and it just provides a bit of a safety net for later on.
I think the user. I don't want to take up too much, because I'm sure other people will chat, but I think that the user flow, the tech spec, towards the end is a checklist, isn't it? And you're not going to get, you know, there is going to be some things that are going to be missed, but at least you have this go-to where it's a matter of, okay, we'll get that fixed, we'll get that changed, and user flows, user stories, the whole heap, and QA is massive as well.
Absolutely.
I think allowing that time for feedback as well, and we are gonna come up with some challenges. I mean, even the devices, some of the devices that we're using, like still surprises whenever we go out on site and start using them. But yeah, sorry to hear that you had so much trouble with your developers. But there's always misguidance.
What I'm hearing is communication key and expectation. That's kind of fundamental.
And managing customer expectations is very important as well.
Yes, and timelines, I would imagine. Cool. I mean, you've been very patient waiting for us. I think you've managed to unmute yourself okay?
Yeah, it just froze. I'm up and down along, and our internet isn't the best. But yeah, I just wanted to comment for Mark from a different kind of approach. I'm from a philosophy and self-taught digital marketing background, and when I originally came up with the idea for Genesis Engine, we wanted to help small businesses remove the time, the cost, and the expertise. But obviously, I'm not a developer or engineer myself. So for my journey, I went looking for the right kind of person, and I think you need to think about your developers and your engineers as you would your target customer. You need to go do that research, find out, what they're doing at this present time, where they are, like what stage of their career journey are they at, like do they share your vision, like all that. Took into account why I chose Matt, and then I actually found him in Thailand, and he's Australian. So I looked far and wide for the right developer, and then I actually worked with him for 6 months, just building websites that weren't the actual project to see whether he was actually the right fit for the team or not. And then I knew I could kind of trust him because we were working together 24 hours a day for 6 months. Like, we had built up a relationship at that time. So there is another way to go about, getting the right developer to help you get an MVP together. And now, we're starting to expand out our team, and we're also doing that by people that have, consulted with us and been there for like 6 months before we actually take them on for work. So there is that. You can kind of find people that do share your vision that way, if they're willing to contribute to the project just out of interest rather than a monetary value. But yeah, that's all I kind of wanted to say. Hope that helps.
Thank you. Grania, how are you doing?
Hi guys. Yes, guys, I'm just here with Derek, partner here in the business, just who's helping out with the tech side. So he has a couple of questions, if that's okay.
Absolutely. Work away.
Hi guys. I'm currently building, an MVP using WordPress, and I'm using a theme template to do that. I was just wondering, I would prefer to use a piece of software rather than a theme, because with a theme I'm kind of working my way backwards rather than forwards, because something that we built and I'm trying to change it. But I'd prefer to use a kind of a no-code piece of software. Is there one out there that would help me, like Bubble? What I'm trying to build will need to have a kind of a listings type of style on it, where you can search for businesses in the local community.
Okay, David, I know you'll add lots to that, and I think Leanne, if you may be answering that question.
Yeah, I was just going to say that for me, that's 100% the right way to go, which I've now since learned. And I think that Bubble is fantastic because it's robust enough to take you quite far down the journey. And what's quite nice is that because it's so visual, you can move things about and you can actually see what's going on.
Right.
And actually, having used Bubble now, because we had to restart our whole process, it's made such a difference, because I think as a non-tech founder, I can move things about, update the flow quite quickly.
Yeah.
And there's some really good training programs. I think it's Bubble Bootcamp is one of the best. It's cost you $49 a month or something, and it tells you exactly how to build exactly what you want to build. So I would 100%, if I have to start again, would have started with Bubble, and then later down the road go a full code route if you need to.
With Bubble, our validation came back that a lot of our users would be looking to use just like a normal computer website rather than an app. So does Bubble allow you to be able to create a tablet type style platform rather than an app style?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah,
So what was your
it's
name?
actually better.
Derek, so just to give you some more feedback on that, first of all, I would say start on actually just drawing out on paper your flow, like what you actually want to build before you actually dive into the tech. Have an understanding of what you actually want to do. And then from there, there's lots of different things you can do, because if you want to use WordPress, there's nothing wrong with using WordPress, but you just need to know how to tinker code and work your way through that. But if you want to actually dive into actually using a no-code platform, there's lots of different things, because similarly with the likes of your themes you're looking at, there's options within Bubble, there's options with Glide, there's options with Adalo you mentioned earlier. Like you can like get a theme, like you could search for a marketplace app, and you could utilize that, and then you could have your build done very quick. But if you are looking to do something that's quite different than other people, you're going to have this come up with the same problems as you were having with WordPress, because you're going to be wanting to change things. So that's where I would very much focus on just if you want to look at the two options, where if you map out your flow, if this is how I want my customer to actually journey to be, and this is what I want the outcome to be, then have that first, and then you can decide what technology I'm actually going to use.
Great.
Mark has shared another question here. So as a founder, I'm fairly ignorant to the types of framework. Mine has been developed back-end in Laravel 8 and Ionic 5 front-end. Is this sound? I'm going to go to you directly, Connor, for this. I've heard a lot about Flutter recently for front-end. Confused about if I can use some or all of my code to build on, or it might be more cost-effective in the long run to just start again with a different framework.
Laravel's great, by the way. Laravel's amazing.
Okay, that's good. There you go.
No problem with Laravel. I've got a lot of love for Ionic as well, and it's fully extensible, so you can build on that. And Flutter is very technical. If you want to get into Flutter, I tried to get into Flutter, and I've been a software developer for 20 years, and I found it difficult technically to get into it. I find Ionic a lot easier to use and to extend features on. So I don't see anything wrong with what's being used at the moment.
Mark, you see with Laravel as well, just want to add, like Laravel has an amazing community. So Laravel is open source as well. It has an amazing community. So if you there's in 2020, I guess, and onwards, like there's a big thing between like PHP and JavaScript. A lot of developers using JavaScript these days just because Facebook own React, and that's what's being pushed. But there's a really good open source community which focus on Laravel, and Laravel can integrate with like say Vue.js, and you can do a lot of powerful stuff with it. So like I wouldn't necessarily worry about the framework and the tools that your developers are doing. Just put your trust in the developer, and then make sure you have a like the documentation, because if your developer goes sour, then you can get another developer fairly quickly.
Yeah, just to add that, I think the framework, every developer will have their own preference. Every development team or agency will have their own preference. We used Laravel for several years, and only just recently did we move to a .NET Core infrastructure, and the reason for that is just a few reasons actually. One is recruitment locally, but Laravel is a fantastic framework, great community support, and I think that's the key there, making sure you're building something that has community support and that's open source, and that if your development team disappear or if you want to move, you can easily transfer that across.
I think that's a really important point, James,
it is.
If for the likes of Leanne having, I suppose, all your ducks in a row really, if things do move on and you do switch developers, so like interested to hear what are those kind of like key considerations, like what do you need to have done so that your product can be moved between developers?
Yeah, just make sure you own all the keys to everything. To a certain extent, we set up Git infrastructures for our clients, but we always give them access to it if they request it, and it's probably better practice just to give them access to it anyway. But I think having the keys to everything, making sure that if things go sour, that you can turn things on and off, is always key. I think other considerations are, as I said, there frameworks and support for frameworks, ensuring that you're using something that is easily transferred across. And just to add to your question, sorry, in terms of Ionic, Ionic is a great platform, fantastic. We used it on a number of projects, and again, it's much of a muchness. In terms of mobile app development, there are really three ways to go about it. You've got PWAs, you've got cross-platform, which would be React Native and Flutter. We sit sort of more in that middle area. We're exploring Flutter at the moment because it is very up and coming. We do feel like it's there's definitely grounds for it. But our preference is React Native. So again, much of a muchness. That depends on the agency, depends who you're hiring, and there are agencies out there and businesses out there that focus just purely on native development. So I think the key here is just making sure that your frameworks are solid and well used.
Okay, good to know. Emma, you going to share something else there? No, possibly not, maybe just not muted. We also do have Laura White and Carrie-Anne on the call. I know, Carrie-Anne, you're still very much in the kind of considering and thinking about a technical product to, I suppose, transform somewhat your service-based offering at the moment. So don't worry if you don't have any questions, but you're very welcome. And Laura, feel free to share if you do have any questions yourself as well, or even share what stage you're at with Budget Music videos.
Hi, I actually know Ali from Sugar Rush. We've had many conversations.
Hi.
Hello, Ali.
How's it going?
Yeah, so obviously I just built this platform and we have no clue about tech, not techy at all. And the platform is doing quite well. It's not, I mean, the main part of the tech element of my website is actually the video editing software that we built. But it wasn't built very well. It was only a prototype and it's fine, but it works. And it's proven the concept, people are using it, we're making money, you know, it's great. So moving forward at the minute, we're obviously on the accelerator program with you guys and we're, you know, trying to get investment to move it forward. And the big thing for me is obviously trying to decide what, as we move forward, what we're building on. Ali from Sugar Rush has actually been you were quite informative with me and gave me lots of really great advice and coded me as well. So I obviously am still in this you know, road of discovery. But I did the digital search program. I don't know if anybody's heard of that. And I got this amazing mentor who basically the architect who has guided me through all the tech behind everything that I have and everything that I need. So I kind of I'm a much more armed person now than what I was probably 6 months ago. So that's kind of where I'm at. So I kind of do know what I need. We're planning to build from scratch our platform anyway. So.
That's my question. You know, when you're talking about the lower code tools, and when do you make that decision to start to maybe build from scratch and scale? You know.
I think when you reach the point, you'll know it. When you hit that point where there's just no more flexibility or no leverage left in those platforms, that you know that you need to extend and you need to iterate. It goes back to the conversation about MVP and versus prototyping and market validation. You know, when you hit a stage where the no-code solution or the low-code solution really just has hit its limit and you physically can't do anything more, I think that's a decision where you need to approach your own development team or an agency like mine and Ali's. I think sometimes those no-code solutions as well, whilst they're great, they work for those more data processing tools. You know, you're not going to be able to build a Zoom on a no-code solution. So I think the no-code solutions are fantastic when there's constraints that you need to sit within. If you have an idea for an app, for example, you were talking about Simon and Kate earlier, you know, that type of infrastructure, something like Glide's perfect. But if you're developing something which is, I don't know, I'm trying to use an example here, something that connects to a device and analyzes signals in the brain, you know, you're not going to be able to use a no-code solution for that. So I think prototyping when it makes sense and moving on, or making the decision when the time is right, or it may just be the product at the time is right, that you need to actually carry a team. But yeah, I think you'll know when you hit that stage.
I think it's really exciting when you have somebody come to you with this really thought out, you know, non-code platform, and you know that things are serious, and you know everybody gets involved in that. I'm not saying it's a perfect scenario, but I mean we're obviously engaged with a lot of projects that maybe haven't got that far. Definitely helps though. I mean it speeds up the process. So if you've really rinsed the whole sort of non-code platform, I think yeah, you know when you'll know, and bringing that to a design team or development team, that's really exciting because it's probably thought out.
Yeah. And just to add to that, you know, to give you a case study, I guess, we're just in the final stages of a project where the client that built it on Adalo went from market validation, but actually went beyond market validation and had users using it. It was used by, there's a two-coined approach to the project, but it was used by restaurants. and they had multiple restaurants on board paying them a fee just on this no-code solution. But I think that decision and that trigger to move from no-code to actually approaching an agency like ours was that their users were getting frustrated, and that they actually had paying customers. They think they need to take it a bit more seriously. So they approached ourselves, and we're redeveloping that. But using that no-code solution really helped us, catapult us to the discovery stages, because at discovery stages we're not picking apart what do you want. We're actually picking apart a product that already exists. We're digging into the depths of that product and digging into the data of that product to be able to pair that off with something which is a bit more real and a bit more custom.
I think that's really, sorry, David, going ahead. I was just going to make a point just what you said, James, about like the data capture as well is really key, because that shares so much insight into the user experience of the app, and kind of where those drop-off points might be, and then how you can adapt to fix those.
Exactly.
Almost. So really, really important to get that right from the start.
Yeah, no, like what you're saying there is great as well, because like the data capturing is. Like, I would never really recommend that anyone just goes and builds a no-code app and that's their product, but that's their service. But I mean, it's all about just what you want to test, what you want to validate. It's like whenever we were chatting with Laura earlier, we're a brew crew and we were talking about opening up like a sandwich product, and we were half joking but half serious. And she was asking how much would that cost to actually build that app, and I was like, to be honest, if you're serious, just start an Instagram page. Start an Instagram page, an account, and go around Belfast and start reviewing sandwiches. And then if you can actually validate that you have users and people are interested in that, then you can actually build a product out of it if you want. But it's just like validating your idea is the most important thing here. So all we have to do, doesn't matter what technology you use, but if you're able to validate it somehow, then you get the data and you can build some. And then you get an investor, and then you'll come in and build the next Facebook or whatever.
Investment's a big part. Some investors, if they see a prototype, will look at putting around their pocket, because it's at a stage where they can see that there's a product there. It's a stage where they can see actually this is worth investment at these early stages.
I think like the costing is so important too, because like founders will come to raising, like they'll literally have no money. Some people have absolutely no money at all, and then it's like, well, what do you do? Oh, you go apply for a Techstart grant, but then even if you get a Techstart grant, that's only 10 grand you're gonna have to play with. Like if you most agencies or startup focused prototyping companies, they would do like a couple of months maybe max for 10 grand. You might get anything built, but that's where you're able to focus and go, this is something I actually want to test, get some results, and then you can spend that 10 grand, go Techstart again and get the next grant, and then get actual investment.
It's something we're looking at the moment, wrapping a fixed fee around a package of services. No, this isn't a plug, by the way. I'm just throwing it out there because it is something that we've looked at, because it is a key issue for a lot of even bootstrap companies, bootstrap startups that just don't have 30, 40 grand to be firing at a product, but do have some initial maybe grant funding that they can use towards those early stages. But yes, so definitely, I'd say so that there's something there in terms of giving startups a packaged offering that they can avail of, and they know what they're getting for a fixed fee, and that they're not having to break the bank on that.
Thank you
Thank you very much. Thank you.
I think, Carrie Ann, you had raised your hand online. I don't know if that was a mistake, but feel free to share if you do have anything to say.
Hi you guys, so I'm financial services industry and have no clue at all of tech or anything, like even some of these words that you're saying, I'm like, what the heck is that, like MVPs and ARs, I'm like, okay, this is completely no clue to me, but I have an element of my business that I would love to digitize in some way, but I don't even know where to even start, what that would look like. Is it an app, is it a coded thing or something? I mean, this is what I'm talking about, is I have absolutely no clue on where to even start or who to even speak to or what that would even look like, if that makes sense. But I have in my head the problem and a solution, but I just don't know exactly what is all in between to make that work. Any advice, any tips, anyone that wants to say have a coffee and give me some ideas? Or
You've started in the right place by coming on this call today.
well, couldn't be more perfect.
Well, the first thing I would say, and like everyone absolutely share, is just to start and keep talking about it. Like talk to people talk to your current customers, talk to people in the team, just understand exactly what that problem is that you're trying to solve, and then you'll have a greater idea of how you can do that using technology. That's just that keep thinking about it and talking about it and listening to others.
It's the technology end of it. I don't know where that would be. So I know what the problem is, and I know what the solution needs to be in terms of how to fix the solution for a client. But what is, like, how do I go about that being an app or being like an online platform or something? That's the kind of element of it where I'm totally no clue.
I'll just jump in. There's a couple of different things you can do. So your main options are to either build it yourself. So if you want, what you want to do is learn about tech, you can go on YouTube, you can search for how do I build an app, how do I build a website, learn about code, learn about no code. The other options is to hire an agency, to work with an agency, and they'll build you something. The third option is to maybe hire a developer, like maybe you just want to hire something, like put a job out there and say I have an idea for a startup. You want to hire a developer, and then you can hire someone to work for you full time or part time or whatever. But
and even before that, Carrie-Anne, which is I think is probably where you're at. You know, speaking to people, like I say, even Leanne has sent a message in there offering to have a coffee to talk you through it. Speak to people like the founders who are, you know, 2 or 3 steps ahead of you. Like the guys who are currently building something, like they both have been in the position where they have a solution to a problem that they've seen, and they've gone and they've built something around that, or they've even, you know, started to think about how they would build something around that. And I think in terms of like platform versus app, I think understanding the needs of potential customers is key there. So if you understand what kind of spaces they're existing in, or what spaces they're most likely to exist in, to, you know, to have this problem solved for them, that's going to be really key too.
There's another thing.
The Xero is the one financial service that pops to mind. Like Xero, you're not going to use on your mobile very often because it's such a big data-driven budget spreadsheet thing. So that'll be like your platform will be on your computer, because if you're out and about and you've got a mobile app and it's a hospitality app and you want to see what's in the local area, then it's something that lives on your device, so that back to where they are and what they're going to use it for, and how much data probably as well reflects on what it is. But yeah, happy to have a chat, and we use the raised community as well.
Yeah, that's an excellent plug. Just before I was about to do it. So I think most guys are part of our community on Slack, but if not, I'll certainly add you in. Really, really nice space to just kind of lean into the advice and experience of other people, particularly like founders and entrepreneurs who have been there and done that. So, you know, it's an excellent place just to kind of share and get in touch with resources and advice. So by all means, I'll certainly share that with you, Carrie-Anne.
No, thank you. Much appreciated.
Co-founders, maybe. So.
Absolutely, yes.
So co-founders is another like a program run by Catalyst, who Reza worked with many times, and what that is a program where they get about 60 developers and techies, and then about 60 people with ideas. They get them into one room, and then what they do is try and get you to form a team. So you pitch your idea, and then you have to actually go form that team. So I went on last year with a project I was working with called Sugar Financial Technology. What they do is you get in, you form a team, and then you go through like a sort of design thinking process to actually test that idea out. And at the end, you might be able to get some money out of it. But that's a good place to even just to go, and even if you're not successful, you're just going into that room. The same as like joining our raised community, is like you're just putting yourself around those types of people that have the same ideas and have technical skills and have product management skills and whatever, and just surround yourself with those people, and then eventually the idea will form and you'll be a success.
And is that event coming up anytime soon, or?
Yes, application for co-founders open at the moment, and they'll start that in the new year, so we can send you the details of the co-founders program. Yeah.
We will indeed.
Perfect. Appreciate it, guys. Thanks so much.
You're welcome. Does anybody else have any questions or anything that's kind of jumping out of them that people should know, or they'd like to share? No, I think we've covered a lot there. I think really when we come down, there are a number of options that you can explore whenever you're looking at building a technical product. Each of those comes with their own considerations and their own implications of how that might look in, say, a couple of years' time or whatever. But everything does seem to be specific to your own use case. So really just understanding the resources and support that's out there. I mean, particularly with Raise, like we're always, you know, happy to have a coffee or a chat with anyone that kind of isn't sure what direction to go in, and lean into all of those support resources and to understand what people have been through, how those guys have done it before, what with the pitfalls, like Leanne sharing her experience, really, really valuable. Thank you so much, Leanne. And just understand exactly, know what you're getting into, I think, before you get there would be my kind of key takeaway for this. But yes, if nobody else has any questions, I really hope you enjoyed that. If it's your first time, oh, I see Leanne. Go on ahead, Leanne. How are you?
Sorry, I was just going to say something that I've learned is that even it doesn't matter how almost primitive your MVP is. What if you are going on to raise money? an investment from investors, angels, and that they want to see that you've got something that is a clicky thing, and that you've got a few people who've actually used it. And that's something that I they talk about pre-seed capital, but actually what they really mean there is that you have built something, even if it is primitive, and that you have tested it with a handful of people. So I would bear that in mind. Even if it is a bubble product that you built yourself, it still goes a hell of a long way to helping you secure investment if that's the path that you're following.
I would agree. I think validation is definitely the utmost. You got to get the users on board, validate it, make sure it works. Because I mean, look, we're in a space now. There's no blind checks out there, and if people are putting money on the table, we want to see it works. But that's absolutely key now.
Yeah, and recording data, so getting metrics at every. If you can bake that in at the start, like even if it's Google Analytics or whatever, just to show the data that people are using it and they're using it in this particular way, is really useful. And I think it's overlooked a lot of the time that the monitoring, the metrics come after it's built, and after it's out there in the wild. But in actual fact, it should come at the start.